Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for attending Coast to Coast Legal Aid's Homeownership Clinic. My name's Joanne Gallipalt. I'm the lead consumer law attorney here at Coast to Coast, and I'll be facilitating the discussion today. As for my credentials, I graduated with my Juris Doctorate from Nova Southeastern University in 2008, and I have specialized in foreclosure and consumer law for the past 15 years. Today, we're going to be touching on some important milestones regarding home ownership, ranging from issues in purchasing a home to common home repair issues, refinancing, reverse mortgages, and of course, dreaded foreclosure process. Feel free to drop any questions or comments in the chat at any point during this clinic, and we'll try to address as many questions as we can before we break this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We have assembled a panel of experts who have generously agreed to share their time and knowledge with us. For the next hour, you're going to be hearing from the below people. You'll be hearing from Gino Moro, who's a loan specialist, who's been working in the mortgage industry for almost 25 years, offering residential, commercial, and reverse mortgage loans. He recently led the Florida Association of Mortgage Professionals as their president, and currently holds a position as a board member of the Broward Housing Council. We're also joined by Rita Killinger, who's the Director of Development and Community Engagement for Rebuilding Together Broward County, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the homes and lives of low-income homeowners in Broward County. With a passion for social justice and community development, Rita has devoted her career to understanding the unique needs and struggles faced by low-income individuals and communities, and creating positive change in the lives of those in need. The mission of Rebuilding Together Broward, as you'll hear, is to preserve affordable home ownership and enhance the quality of life for low-income residents, particularly the elderly, disabled individuals, veterans, and families with children. We're also joined by Suzanne Weiss, who's the manager of Broward County Housing Finance Division's Homeownership and Home Repair sections. She's helped her team provide purchase assistance and home repair services to more than 200 Broward County residents each year. Ms. Weiss has been engaged in almost all aspects of South Florida residential real estate development, having worked for numerous residential builders and major lenders. She has been a Florida licensed real estate broker since 1984 and has more than 15 years experience with nonprofit housing agencies, developing, renovating, and selling affordable homes in the South Florida market. And we're also joined by attorney Hashi Richards, who's been a practicing attorney since 2001. She graduated from the University of Miami and has asked me to insert an emphatic "Go Canes," but that goes against my belief system as I graduated from UCF. She graduated in 2001, as I said, with both a Juris Doctorate degree as well as an MBA, and currently manages a private practice where she specializes in foreclosure matters, estate planning, and immigration. We're hoping that by the end of this hour, you'll be able to spot transactional pitfalls when buying a home, understand all of your options when hiring a contractor to make repairs, know when it's beneficial to refinance your loan or apply for a reverse mortgage, and understand how to avoid a foreclosure proceeding. With all that in mind, I'm going to send everything over to Gino Moro to get us started and remind you that you're always free to add any questions in the chat as we go through this clinic today. So Gino, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. I'd like to start off with the purchase transaction. A lot of times renters are looking to look at their first purchase as a primary home, especially because the rent market has gone up excessively recently. And what we find is most of the time, if there's a lot of misinformation about what you need to do to buy your first home, and I want to clear that up because it's actually quite basic. We need to look at a 2-year history. That's always what we're looking at for employment, and we're looking forward 3 years. So if you are employed, we want to see that consistency. There are some exceptions, pregnancy, any type of leave, we can make exceptions to that, but we typically want to see a 2-year period. The other thing that you want to have is an expectation of what it's going to cost you out of pocket. When you're getting an estimate for a loan, or you're getting an estimate and you're looking at down payment, you have to look at the full picture. There are certain things that you find out through the course of doing this that you won't necessarily know up front. For example, most people know there's a down payment that's required. FHA loans require 3.5% down payment. And then you have conventional financing that typically will offer 5%. In some cases, it can go down to 3%. And there's some other exceptions there as well. But you also have to be aware that when you get your loan, most of the time it will have an escrow account. You'll have to purchase insurance for the first year up front. You also have to set some money aside in that escrow account. So what we will typically see, and it depends on the type of property you purchase, but you will need somewhere between 6 to 8% of the cost of that home in terms of money that will be needed for the closing transaction, between that down payment and everything else that you will need there. The other thing that I see a lot of folks do is go out and voluntarily type their information in, such as your income, your assets, things like that, to get a pre-approval letter from certain lenders. Will let you type that in and get that done. That is not worth the paper it's typed on. So really have a professional take a look at your assets, your income, and actually calculate it properly to make sure you've been pre-underwritten. Makes a big difference. It will eliminate any surprises in the mortgage and that purchase process. You don't want to have a surprise after you've put a big down payment down. The houses are very expensive. Now the price have gone up, so those down payments are significant. You want to protect that as much as possible. And then always get yourself a home inspection. Make sure there's nothing that's deficient or in need of some severe maintenance that you'll find out later. It's worth investing into a good home investment. And really the other thing too is take a look at your credit up front. Look for anything that's been derogatory in the last 2 years specifically. You can have some before that, but really the last 2-year history needs to be as clean as possible. If you have some blemishes, that can be looked at pretty quickly. And in a nutshell, that's where I would go. On a first-time purchase, look at your down payment that you have. If you look to your first, last, and security deposit that you have with your rental property. If you are renting right now, that's usually a pretty significant amount of money. Do not make any cash deposits into your bank account. An underwriter will exclude those from your available assets. That's it in a nutshell. If we have any questions, I can take some, related to those topics, but that's where I would start.
Yeah, thank you for that information, Gino. Suzanne, is there anything that you would add to that? I know you have a lot of experience in this area as well.
Well, Gino is truly expert, and that's one of the things I would recommend to any consumer, to please use a legitimate, respectable, established lender that knows what they're doing. As he said, a pre-qual when you've just typed in some things is not worth the paper it's written on. A lot of people get bamboozled. They get a postcard that gets mailed through and they think they're pre-approved for a great mortgage, and they've just started the process. So what we at Broward County have is to augment. We realize it's a high-priced community we live in, and we provide home buyer purchase assistance. So we can help buyers with a second mortgage loan that's forgivable. In most of the areas we serve, it's up to $50,000. Other areas we serve up to $80,000. And it's a 15-year second mortgage. That's a term, 0% interest, non-amortizing, no monthly payments are due. If the homeowner lives in the home for the full 15-year period of time, at the 15th year on one day, that mortgage is forgiven. We follow satisfaction of mortgage. Should they sell the house prior to that period of time, they would owe that money back to Broward County. There are qualification requirements. And a surprising bit of news, this is not eligible for millionaires. You actually have to make enough money to qualify for that first mortgage loan that meets our guidelines, but you can't make too much money. So generally your household income has to be at or beneath 80% of the area median income. We just got charts the other day, HUD released them. So for an example, a single individual, if their gross household income does not exceed $53,800, they would be eligible for our program. For a household of 4, that dollar amount is $76,800. So that's the cap. They have to make enough to qualify. They can't make too much money, but we're here to help. We serve 24 cities in Broward. We also have a home repair program too for homeowners, not for investors, not for secondary homes. So this program is same type of, they have to be income eligible. We basically do hurricane hardening. We'll re-roof, put on impact windows and doors, change out air conditioning systems. If people have special needs or somebody within the household has some physical disability, we'll put in ramps and widen doorways and whatnot. That rehab mortgage is 10 years and forgivable at the end of 10 years. So both are very robust programs offered through our division there. It's great programs.
So Suzanne, how do you apply for that second mortgage program that you were discussing if somebody thinks that they might want to research that further?
Well, one of the things they'd want to do is find out if they meet the income eligibility. So we have information at www.broward.org/housing and follow the links for home buyer programs. Or they could give a call and we would send the information out. Our number is 954-357-4943. But frankly, we work directly with the first mortgage lender because the buyer has to do their job. They have to be pre-approved or get approved with a first mortgage loan that meets our guidelines. They have to take a class from a HUD counseling agency, a local HUD agency. We have those listed. There's probably 12 that are in Broward County. And then they have to identify a home that is in one of the areas we serve. We serve 24 cities in Broward County out of the 31. The lender will reserve the funds on behalf of the client. When the client's got all these steps, we then write to the lender and say, yes, the funds are reserved, and the lender submits the package. So we're happy to talk to any realtor, lender, housing counselor, or client about the program. But primarily the individual that drives the bus is the first mortgage lender.
Okay, that's really great information. Another question I have for both of you, you might be getting this question a lot, Gino and Suzanne also. We have people wondering when it's a good time to consider purchasing a home. Interest rates are high, but rent is also high. And so how do people determine whether it's the right time for them to start, reviewing their assets and determining whether they can go out and actually search for and purchase a home?
Do you want me to take that, Suzanne?
You started, Gino Island did. How's that?
So with the rent market where it's at, if you compare what you're paying for rent to what you can pay on a mortgage, right now it's actually cheaper to own a home than it is to pay for rent. That is not even to talk about the protections that having a primary residence affords you in Florida. So one thing you need to consider is most of the time you can afford a little bit more than you're paying for rent because you do have a tax incentive that you get at the end of the year, and you need to consider that because it's dependent on your tax bracket. So definitely talk to your financial advisor or whoever does your accounting for you, but you can afford more. You will get some money back at the end of the year and reductions on your taxes. So do look at that. But I would take a look at the money you have saved. If you have enough with your first, last, and security deposit on the rent, and you're going to recover some of that, and then with that you're able to get into a home, I wouldn't hesitate. It doesn't look like this market is moving. I certainly don't expect the rent market to decrease. We're seeing a lot of people come in, investors and so on, and the rent market is here to stay. It's not going to change. So it's unrealistic to think that it's a long-term solution. Owning your home is a permanent long-term solution. So if you can do it, do it.
I concur. It's like having a child. There's never a perfect time to have a child. And it's almost like there's never a perfect time to buy a home because you'll look back and you go, boy, the interest rate was 0.5 point last month lower, or, gosh, I missed that deal. Every single deal is unique. You need to just make a commitment. I'm following the path to homeownership. And just as Gino said, the very high rental market is here to stay. I don't see that landlords are going to reverse that. So it is at this moment less expensive to own a home month to month than it is to rent. One of the things our program provides is, again, that down payment money that is so important. Also, we all bite, gosh, interest rates are 7, 6.5, 7. It was, a year ago, 2.5, you're crying the blues. I remember the days, that's when we've been in here a long time, when they were 18% and people were closing transactions. So again, it's never the golden day. But one of the things with our program is you can use a portion of our money to perhaps buy down the interest rate on your mortgage to meet affordability guidelines. So if you need to get to a 6% interest rate as opposed to the 6.5, if your first mortgage lender has that ability to do that, you can use some portion of our funds to do that buy down.
Yeah, I'd like to add one caution there.
Go.
Do not make the interest rate your most important determining factor. That is not always what really will determine what the cost will be.
Right.
Buying down the rate is phenomenal when you can do it. What I usually recommend is if you're going to purchase the rate and buy it down, that you don't buy it down past the point where you will see a benefit within the first 3 years. So if you spend $1,000 to buy the rate down, you want to save $1,000 on your mortgage payment
Right.
within that first 3-year period. If it goes beyond that, I would waive it. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and these can be, complicated analysis to make if you're not a professional and, routinely accustomed to reviewing these kinds of contracts.
Right.
So that's why you're saying it's so important to reach out to somebody who's experienced and has been doing this a long time.
Right.
And, the mortgage payment and the interest payment and the escrow, that's only a portion of home ownership, because then you end up with, repairs, right? I mean, you have to account for the finances it's going to take to maintain the roof and the floors and the property. So I know, Rita, that's something that your organization assists with. So maybe you could jump in and talk about contracting for repair work and how that is typically done.
Sure. So I'm within an organization called Rebuilding Together Broward County. We do critical home repairs, accessibility modifications, and revitalization efforts to help individuals and their families in need all across Broward County. Typically, we serve lower income populations, and we do those repairs at no cost. So some of the things that we see, thank you, Gino and Susan, for taking over the preliminary steps. And once you're a homeowner, the reality kind of starts to set in, right? So some of the things that we often see as a part of what our client needs are, and some of the homeowner tips to maintaining safe and healthy housing. A big one is to maintain regular cleaning. This is, I think, probably one of the most underrated things that you can do as a homeowner, but regular cleanings, including, cleaning surfaces, mopping the floors, dusting, vacuuming, simple things like that. We have seen a lot of houses that just have been neglected over time and potentially, unintentionally. So we have senior homeowners who might not be able to do some of the work, or individuals who have disabilities who might not physically be able to do some of the work. And some of that stuff adds up over time. So regular cleaning is a simple step to work towards maintaining your home in a safe and healthy way. Indoor air quality is very important. That's something that's especially important, actually, in the area that we live in, considering mold. So making sure you have great ventilation, using exhaust fans in the kitchen, avoid smoking indoors, regularly changing your air filters and your cooling system, getting your AC cleaned. Those are all really important things that will need to be scheduled throughout the year and throughout your time as a homeowner, to keep your systems not only healthy in your home, but to keep them running. You can't let your AC system go 5 years without being serviced. It probably won't last a very long time. Preventing moisture and mold is very big down here as well. So repairing any leaks, addressing any sources of moisture in the home promptly to prevent mold growth, More recently than not, we had the big flood in many parts of Broward County. I know myself and our executive director, Robin, were both affected by that. So I can speak a little bit more to that later on in the conversation if need be, but tips to potentially mitigating the damage that can be caused by water damage. And then you have your fire safety and carbon monoxide safety, making sure that smoke detectors are on every floor in your sleeping areas, making sure they're tested and batteries are replaced as needed. Another thing that we don't often think about is the fire safety escape plan. So once you're in that house, making sure that you know how to get out of that house in the case of an emergency, should you have to. And then of course, if you have like fuel burning appliances, having those inspected as well annually at least to make sure that those are running in good condition. Electrical safety is very important as well. We see a lot of homes that are in great need of electrical repairs, checking the cords and outlets for damage, replacing frayed or worn out cords. A lot of older homes throughout Broward County might have cloth wiring. That also could become an insurance issue potentially, but it most certainly can be a safety issue. So making sure that that's either replaced or in not deteriorating condition at the very least. And of course, hiring a licensed electrician for any sort of repairs that you might need. Security is very important as well. You might want to look into getting some sort of a security, even if it's just like a little ring on your door, or motion sensor lights. Having exterior lighting is very important in that exterior home security safety situation. Pest control is also a big one. Taking proactive measures to not just kill the pests that you might have in your house, but also to prevent them from coming in. So sealing cracks, gaps in the walls, windows, doors. Sometimes they might be coming from somewhere that is not easily visible. You might have, if you as a homeowner are capable, or somebody who is, get up on the roof and try and see if there are any openings through the roof, through any soffits or things like that. You might want to consider a pest control service if that's something that you're able to do. And really just staying on top of home maintenance tasks, maintaining and cleaning your gutters, that's very important. Maintaining the roof, checking for leaks or damage to plumbing and fixtures, and doing the annual inspections on the home's major components to keep them up and running. The last thing any of us wants to happen is that our AC goes out in the middle of July and we can't get someone out for a service call until the beginning or middle of August. And it's 95 degrees and we didn't have our AC checked in the last couple of years. And it's been a problem that's been ongoing, but you might just not know about it. Another thing that's really important, once you move into your house, it's really important to know like the location of utility shutoff valves. How to turn things off in case of an emergency. Your water shutoff valve might be in your house. It might be in the street. You might need to have a key provided by this, I believe, by the city to shut that off in case you were to have some sort of a leak in your house. You obviously want to mitigate that damage as quickly as possible so it doesn't turn into anything bigger. And then when doing bigger projects, Joanne touched on it a little bit. It's very important that the service individuals that you hire, the contractors, or anyone who's coming out, tradesperson who's coming out to your house, is licensed and insured. It's okay to ask for a copy of their license. It's okay to ask for a copy of their insurance. It's okay to ask for referrals, references, to look them up. And, that might even be at the Better Business Bureau, see what their rating is there. You can cross-check their license on myfloridalicense.com most of the time, and just making sure that everything adds up. The one thing I will say is the insurance part is very important because you don't want to get into a situation where you have to reach out to their insurance company and you didn't get their insurance and now you're on bad terms and you have to ask for their insurance and they don't give it to you. So getting all of this stuff up front is really important when you're considering some of the major upgrades. And they can also guide you towards, whether or not permitting is required for certain things or not.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on to that, Rita. Two of the things that I see frequently here, people enter into contracts with contractors for work done, roof, windows, whatever it may be, and the contract won't specify the work that's going to be done. It'll just say windows, and then the person will sign off on it. And then the contractor has some issue with removing the old windows, getting the permit. Nothing's in the contract that delineates the work they're going to do. So we see that a lot, and helping my clients are all seniors, helping our senior clients get out of those contracts, or actually getting the contractor to perform what the work actually is, because nothing's itemized. The second thing is timeframes.
Yes.
I've had several people contact me. They entered into work, contract to have work done. Mostly it's a roof. And 6 months go by, nobody's been out, nobody's gotten a permit, nobody's done an inspection. So two of the things I look for that I remind people to do when they're entering into a contract to have work done, make sure everything's itemized, you know exactly what the contractor has to do, and see if you can get them to give you some kind of a time frame to have that work completed. Just my experience.
Totally. And materials, especially roofing materials. I actually just got my roof replaced. It took 13 months from beginning to end. So some of the materials are on a bit of a delay, but getting something in, a time frame saying, okay, we will apply for the permit by this date. By this date, we will order the materials. We'll be checking with the manufacturer, over this course of time. And yes, even if it's like even if it's, this in a month we'll be doing this, in a month we'll be doing that. Maybe it's not like January 1st, we're going to have this completed because of material delays, but it's very important to have a start and a stop estimate from the contractor, because some of these can go on for a very long time. And if you have issues, you don't want that to, if you have leaking or anything with your roof, it can cause a greater expense, obviously.
And I suspect when a contractor signs you up for a new roof, they're not telling you, unless you ask, that it may take them 13 months to get the materials. So it's just something to ask about when you're going to enter into a contract. So if people want to contact Rebuilding Together Broward, how do they find you? And of all you gave us some information about how to maintain your property. How many of these items that you gave us are actually, can Rebuilding Together Broward actually assist with? All of them, some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get a hold of us, a lot of the clientele we see are based on referrals from other organizations, other cities. You can also call us 954-772-9945 or visit us at rebuildingtogetherbroward.org and collect some more information via our website. We do see quite a few of the things that I had mentioned previously. We have a program that has not yet launched, but we're trying to pilot a program that focuses on indoor air quality to reduce asthma and respiratory related illnesses. So we're currently looking at potentially launching that in the near future, helping clients, specifically pediatric patients who have asthma and respiratory illnesses when they're in their home, because a lot of times we see that environmental triggers such as mold, such as ducts that have not been cleaned, simple things like air filters, or removing carpeting that's older than your grandma, might be causing some of these triggers that are actually sending these kids or these individuals to the hospital, or requiring medications and all sorts of medical interventions. We can help with smoke detector installations, smoke alarm installations. We also do a lot of like accessibility modifications, or installing things such as grab bars, installing entry ramps to help some of our senior clients. And the ultimate goal in all of this for most of our clients is to allow them to stay in place, stay in their home, and if they're elderly, to age in place. We're not trying to kick them out of a house that they've had in their family for 40 years and put them in a market that is not really too affordable right now for them, or send them to a nursing home. We really need them to be able to age in place. We can also help with things like pest control. We might be able to help with things such as exterior lighting, some things such as maintenance on the house. So that could be, cleaning, debris. We also do some community revitalization. So it's not just one specific house that we're going inside and doing this and that. Oftentimes we're concentrating on pockets of neighborhoods to really bring up the neighborhood. So doing exterior landscaping, doing painting, and we have volunteer days for that, where we have volunteers come out and participate in that way, as an overall collective effort in a community. Oh, Joanne, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, here I am. The great COVID curse of all of us. I had another question for you, which is, we've been getting calls from victims of the flooding from just last month. Do you have any resources or know of any organizations or Rebuilding Together Broward, anything that are, when we get those calls, who should we send those people to? What resources are available for them?
Well, one of our programs is disaster recovery. However, right now we're still trying to build up some of that funding and some of the resources to be able to help more individuals in the community who might be underinsured or not insured at all, as far as the flood goes, flood insurance. There are also a lot of things that flood insurance doesn't cover. My first plan, or my first suggestion would be to go to FEMA if you do not have insurance, and to try and source some funding through FEMA to help with things such as temporary housing, potentially moving and storage expenses. But hopefully we are working our way towards getting some funding to help with some of those recovery efforts, and we'll have to see what that looks like.
Well, thank you for providing all that information. It's helpful for everybody who's thinking about buying a home and everybody who already has one. There are things on your list that I don't think we anticipate until something goes wrong. So it was good for you to mention all those things. Suzanne, was there anything you wanted to add regarding, I know you touched on this already, repairs, contracting? Do you have any other additional thoughts you want to add in, resources?
Rita got it all, really and truly.
Yeah, she did. She did a good job.
Unfortunately, with our process, it is a process. We do not have an emergency service. So although we would very much love to go out and do the water extraction and whatnot, I have to do the income cert. I have to go through people, in a waiting pool, if you will. But our process, just like Rita said, we have agencies that manage it. Once people are determined eligible, we send out an inspector. They do a whole house inspection. They write very detailed scope of work. So just like you said, don't just say, I'm going to replace your roof. You need to see, is it shingle? Is it tile? What kind of warranties? Get as many details as possible. You're the consumer. You're required. You would spend that much time selecting a shirt at the store, that you need to find these details. But we send the inspector out, they do an inspection, create a very detailed scope of work. They get a minimum of 3 bids from licensed and insured contractors that are not disbarred, and they have timelines and dates, and they have to perform accordingly. So we follow those good business protocols. And if we find a contractor is not working well with homeowners, first time it may be a kind of a cranky homeowner or unrealistic expectations, but if we see this repeatedly, that contractor will come off our list. So it's just the way it plays, and yeah, I have the same situation. We're just finishing retiling a roof in Weston. It was 16 months to get the tile. For that particular tile, though, the association specified that the special tile color. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I know. I don't think people anticipate it. So
yeah,
need to hash out those details in advance. Go ahead, Rita.
And let me just add also, at Rebuilding Together Broward, we don't typically do things that require permitting. So we will do some of those safe and healthy improvements and modifications. But if it requires permitting, it's likely not something that we would be able to help with. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that the home that an individual or a family is living in is safe and healthy. And at the end of the day, you know, we do what we can to be able to make sure that that happens.
All right, that's great info. Thank you both. You know, just to carry the home ownership timeline a little bit further down here, Gino, it may come to a point where somebody decides either they can lower their monthly payment, they can get a better deal with another lender. When is it a good time to consider whether to do a refinance of your loan, or even whether to consider, you know, getting into a reverse mortgage? When do people make that determination about changing the terms of their mortgage or getting a new mortgage?
So as far as the refinance, as you can imagine, that business has dropped significantly over the last year. But there are situations where it makes sense. If you need to remove one of the homeowners on the property for divorce or something like that. If you're looking for savings, there's not only a savings on the mortgage itself, you can have other debt, credit cards, cars, student loans, things like that. Any debt you're not attached to the house, that's not part of your mortgage, is not going to be tax deductible in most cases. So there are some circumstances where it makes sense to refinance in order to consolidate, get rid of some additional payments that you have to make to a variety of things. And you can reduce your monthly exposure significantly by doing that. But do the math. Even if you're looking at just reducing your interest rate on a loan, really just sit down and very simply pencil it out. If you are in a 30-year loan and you've paid for 10 years, you have another 20 years left to go. Whatever your payment is, and do not count your taxes and insurance, because that is not a mortgage payment. That is something else. Just count your principal and interest and multiply that by how many months you have left on that loan. That is your cost for the loan you have right now. And then add in the items that you're wanting to get rid of or eliminate, or even if you're looking at a new mortgage with a lower interest rate. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a mortgage and we were dropping an interest rate, but overall, if you added up the costs, it would cost you more to get a nice lower interest rate than it would to keep the loan that you have in the first place. So just take the time to do the math on that. Don't be afraid to increase your rate if you do have, you know, excessive credit card debt, things like that. A lot of times it will save you money to do that. And then you also have another option, which is an equity line of credit, a home equity line of credit. You can keep your loan that you have on your home and then get a second lien, which is that line of credit. They will carry a higher interest rate, but you get to keep your loan. If you have a 2 or 3% loan right now, the last thing you want to do is eliminate that if you don't have to. So know that those are available as well. They are going to carry a higher rate. But again, calculate what the difference is between what you're paying right now versus what this can cost you. And don't forget that if it is on your mortgage, there is a tax saving there. So calculate that in there too. So there are a lot of situations where it makes sense.
And Gino, I wanted to ask you about reverse mortgages also, but before we do, you had mentioned earlier the concept of buying down the interest rate.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could explain exactly what you mean by that.
Sure. So in our business, the rate that doesn't cost any money and doesn't give you a credit back is what we call the par rate. Let's just say that's 6%. So if you want to buy the rate down to 5.5%, let's say, it costs a percentage of the loan amount. So if you're buying a $300,000 home, or the loan is $300,000 rather, and it's 1% to buy it down, it would cost you $3,000 to buy that rate down from 6 to 5.5. Now, what you need to do is see how much it saves you on your monthly payment and multiply that and see if you can recover your $3,000 investment and how long it will take you to do that. My recommendation is always 3 years or less. You can, if you know you're going to be there for a very long period, you can go above that. I mean, ultimately they are 30-year mortgages, but in my business, I will tell you things change quite frequently. 3-4 years makes a big difference. Sometimes the market shifts. It's not always good to tie yourself down to a buy down like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you. For a novice like me, I don't do closings. I don't deal with that paperwork. So I appreciate you explaining it.
The
And
opposite is true too. You can increase the rate and get some money back. So those are tools you can use combined maybe with something Suzanne can offer to get some extra money for that down payment. But it works both ways.
yeah, and if you don't do math like me, talk to Gino, talk to Suzanne, somebody who does math. You know, there's a lot of skepticism surrounding reverse mortgages. A lot of people think that it's just a scheme for the bank to steal your house from under you. There's that conception of what it is. So can you explain what a reverse mortgage is, what the purpose of it is, and how you know if it's a good idea or a good concept for a buyer when they're trying to figure out what to do with their mortgage loan?
Sure. So the reverse mortgage is absolutely my favorite loan. I actually cut my teeth on that when I started 24 years ago. So it's misunderstood. And most of your questions can get answered with a little bit of education on it. But in essence, it allows you to take equity out of your home without having to sell it or take on a new mortgage that requires a monthly payment. We buy a home, it increases in value. You have a ton of equity that builds over time, but you cannot touch that equity. It's intangible until you either sell it or take a new loan out. And a lot of seniors that are living on Social Security revenue don't have enough to make an additional mortgage. I can't tell you how many people I meet that are receiving less than $500 a month on Social Security here in South Florida. It is unbelievable, but Social Security was never designed to support your cost of living as well as pay for a mortgage. So if you are at the age where you're ready to retire and you're over the age of 62 and you still have a mortgage, this is a great way to eliminate the mortgage payment. Again, it will eliminate your principal and interest. You still do need to pay for your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And if you live in a homeowners association community, you would have to pay that fee as well. But you do save that principal and interest. And over the life of your loan, that can be thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's FHA insured. There's a lot of protection that's built into a reverse mortgage that people don't know about. For example, if someone has a line of credit with a great deal of money in it, if you remember 2008, when we were going through that market meltdown, anyone who had a line of credit, the banks froze those. They just removed your access to that money. So if it was a safety net, that safety net was gone. With a reverse mortgage, the line of credit is protected and guaranteed for the life of that loan. And the life of that loan is through your 150th birthday. It is truly for life. You don't sell the house. It remains in your name. You keep your homestead exemptions on your property taxes the way you normally had, because there is no change of title there. So there's a lot of tools you can use on a reverse mortgage to stay in the home, not have to sell it. There's also, and I'm seeing this a lot more this year, but there's a number of our seniors that have incurred insurance increases that are really pushing them to the point where it's no longer affordable for them. They have a lot of equity in their homes. So you can use this as a relocation tool as well. You can sell your property that you're in, use the equity you gain from that sale, and then purchase a new home in an area that might be more affordable to you. Using a new reverse mortgage, we can actually purchase a home with a reverse mortgage. So in a nutshell, instead of buying that new home with all the equity and the money that you got from the sale of your property, you can probably spend about half, and then the other money comes from the reverse mortgage loan. It's age dependent, and that's how we determine how much money you would need. But it is a great tool for that as well. And I'm seeing a lot more of that this year.
Yeah, and what is the effect? If you enter into if you enter into a reverse mortgage, as like you said, as a senior who needs the equity to survive in Florida, what happens to the property later? When will that happen? Maybe just explain what the actual effect of the reverse mortgage will be.
So for reverse mortgage, you have to use the property as your primary residence. It's not for investors. So it's your primary home. You have to pay for your property taxes, insurance, and your homeowners association fee if there is one. And you have to maintain it the same way you would for any loan. They just don't want you to let it fall apart. In terms of the heirs, which is I think what you're referring to, right? What happens after you pass away? It's pretty much exactly what happens after you pass away with a regular mortgage. Whatever instructions you leave behind are what's going to happen. If you want to leave the property to your children, they'll inherit the home subject to a mortgage, just like it was a regular mortgage. They have a choice at that point. Do they want to keep the house? And if so, most likely they'll need to refinance it, whether it's a regular loan or a reverse mortgage, or they can sell it and keep the equity in the property. Those are really their two choices. What happens with a regular loan, though, is when you inherit a home that has a regular mortgage with a payment, you have to make that next payment. So if your parents had, $1,500 or $2,000 monthly payment and they pass away, you inherit the home. If you don't start making those payments, you can go into a foreclosure situation quite easily. And it can be a burden on you. And then what it'll effectively do is just strip some of the equity that you would have inherited to costs for having to deal with that foreclosure. A reverse mortgage gives you up to 12 months where you're not responsible for any payments, taxes, insurance, mortgage payments. It gives you the room to breathe to decide what you want to do with that property, keep it or sell it, and then you can act accordingly. But that is unique to reverses. There's no other program that I know of that offers that level of protection for the heirs. You really truly can't hurt yourself or an heir. And the FHA insurance on these products protects really in essence what you would owe if you were to move out and pay it back. So if we go through, let's say, for example, we have a market that declines and you've already received $200,000 from the reverse mortgage, but now your property value dropped to $150,000, like happened in 2008. Well, a reverse mortgage, you can only owe up to 95% of what the value of the home is at the time of repayment. So at that time when it's worth 150,000, even though you've received 200, the debt can't be more than 95% of the 150. So that's an additional protection that you have in place from the program. You're not personally responsible for that. The home basically stands for the debt.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining all that, Gino. And it kind of takes me into the next topic, which is dreaded foreclosure process. Hashi, maybe you can talk about how you've seen clients end up there, what the process is like, and how they get out if they can, and just kind of an understanding of what to do if you find yourself in that situation.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're falling behind on your payments, one thing I would encourage is to be proactive, right? So I would call up your lender. I mean, they already know you're behind, right? So typically they give you about 3 months of leeway before they issue and send you that default letter. And once you get that default letter, it sort of initiates this timeline for foreclosure. But if you're, before you get there, if you're running into payment trouble, there's numerous retention options, right? So I can name a few of them. One is forbearance, where the lender will either suspend or reduce your monthly payments for a short period of time while you get caught up. There's also repayment plans, where you're making your regular payment. In addition, they'll also spread out your past due amounts over a few month periods. So you're paying, let's say, $1,000 a month plus the $300 a month divided by whatever until you get caught up, and you're still able to keep your home and stay in your home. Joe, you may remember the most popular one back in the day was the loan modifications.
Still is. Yeah.
And that requires, as with the forbearance repayment paperwork, but I remember particularly the loan modification requires a lot of documentation where you submit your financials and they try to work with you and see, can we, extend the term of your loan, maybe add on a reasonable balloon payment. They try to work with you to modify your loan to make it more affordable, because really at the end of the day, the bank does not want your house, right? They're encouraging home retention and home ownership. There's also another one, which I very rarely see, is where they completely forgive a payment. I don't know if you've ever seen those. That's when they're being very generous and they just say, hey, you know what, we're going to forgive these past few months of payments as long as you agree to stay current. And so those are some popular retention options. Again, the theme is call the lender, be proactive, and let them know your situation so they can work with you before you fall too far behind. If it's a case of, I can't keep my house, or you're not able to truly afford the payments, there's a couple of non-retention options, which are short sales. And that's when you agree to, you find a buyer for your home and you sell it to this buyer for less than you owe on the mortgage. So a quick example, you find a buyer, and all this, by the way, has to be approved by the bank. So again, it's another application and they have to approve everything. Back in the day, it was taking months to approve these. But anyway, so say, for example, you owe $250 on your home, but you find a buyer that wants to pay $200,000 for it. So now there's that $50,000 deficiency. So you can either, convince your lender in writing to say, can you please waive that amount or forgive it? Or sometimes they may try to go after it later. So it's important to know that if they do forgive it, they'll issue what's called a 1099-C, and you'll have to pay income taxes on that amount. So it's not truly forgiven.
And now it's hard. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, now it's hard to get a short sale, I've noticed, because everybody has equity in the house.
Right.
Obviously, everybody has equity in their house. The banks want every penny of what they're owed. But that used to be such a better option for our clients.
It used to be, and such a relief. I mean, I've been to hundreds of mediations where you can just see the relief on the homeowner's face when they're able to have an opportunity like that. Because at the end of the day, there's no foreclosure on your record. I mean, it does ding your credit a little bit, but it's not as devastating as a foreclosure. The other option I was going to mention quickly was a deed in lieu, which is basically you're voluntarily giving up the title to your home, giving it back to the lender, and they release you from the mortgage. You still have to sometimes deal with the deficiency judgment there. And the difference between those two is they're looking in a DIL, the deed in lieu, they're looking at the fair market value of the home versus a short sale, which is the sales price of the home. And then Joe, I don't know if you want me to quickly go over if none of these work, and then you're in that foreclosure.
Yeah, go through the foreclosure process just so that people aren't surprised if this happens. They should always contact an attorney if it starts, but you could go through the process.
Absolutely, yes. Contact an attorney and get a full consultation and know your rights, and hire that attorney if you feel the need to. But typically, again, it starts with that default letter, and then you have 30 days from there to cure the default. If not, within 30 to 90 days, they're going to file a complaint, that foreclosure complaint. And all this is public record. You can look up a lot of times people say they never got that letter or they haven't been served. You can look up your own cases online by typing in the county you live in and searching on your own just to see what's going on with the case. But once that lawsuit is initiated, then you have a response time of 20 days to respond to the complaint. And then there's, in that period, there's discovery, and there's also mediation. And in that mediation is the time for you also to try to work something out with your lender, actually throughout the whole process, which can run anywhere. And don't quote me on this. People always like to say, you said this many months, but it can last anywhere from 3 months to years, right? Depending on how much discovery, how much interrogatories, all the things that are going back and forth. But once that period has passed, or if you don't answer, it can be fairly quick. They can go and file what's called a motion for summary judgment and set a sale date. And when that sale date comes, you have a couple options to try to stop the sale by filing a motion to cancel sale. But once that sale takes place and a certificate of title is issued, there's really not too much leeway you have, as you know, during that period. So my suggestion is, if you find yourself being sued and you're in the middle of a foreclosure case, again, respond, hire an attorney, go to the hearings. The worst thing you can do is be absent or be non-responsive.
Yeah, and on the same note, I've had, it's scary, especially for seniors when they're behind. Most of them have never been behind before, and some life event caused them to fall behind. And I've had clients call me because they're afraid to open their mail, or they got something from the lender, they don't know what it is, but they want me to look at it.
Yeah.
And so it's important. I try and remind people not to be scared, open their mail, We'll look at it together. And then if they consult with an attorney, great, you know, we can help them with that, but they have to be engaged. Like you were saying, contact the lender, look at what's in the mail.
Absolutely. And Joe, one other thing, I have a mom, she's, elderly. I always tell her, Mom, if you get a letter or anything from any bank or anything, call the number that you know of, that you've been making payments to, because sometimes there's, as you know, there's so many scams out there, people trying to take your home or trying to help you. So always be cautious in who you're talking to and what information you're disclosing.
Yeah. So I hate to end on the note of foreclosure because I think that's, that's intense. It's never best case scenario, but it's not something that's insurmountable. So if it happens, reach out to an attorney, get some advice, reach out to a loan specialist like, Suzanne or Gino, find out what your options are as far as a refinance, a reverse mortgage. If it's an issue where you've had to put all your money into some repair on the house, getting a roof or whatever it is, and now you can't pay your mortgage, reach out to Rita or, there's organizations out there to try and catch people from falling through the crack. Florida is an expensive place to live, but luckily we have organizations that are out there. You guys have given some incredible advice, really, really practical and important advice. Do any of you have anything after hearing all of it that you want to add or that you feel like you want to put out to the community regarding your organizations, or anything that you wanted to just disseminate that you think is important for our Broward residents? Anything at all? I mean, you were all really good about about covering all the bases, but I wanted to give you one more chance because you've been so generous with your time. I just want to make sure that that you said everything you need to.
So I have one thing to volunteer, and that is, and I get this repeatedly, but you really should be checking the price on your homeowner's insurance on a yearly basis. Don't just renew without comparing. A lot of times you'll have a policy from the same underwriter, but different agencies that'll be at a different price point, and it can create some problems. I've seen people go into foreclosure, lose their home, have problems because of insurance that lapsed, forced placed, and so on. But I see that a lot.
Yeah, with the reverse mortgages too. Yep.
Check it every year.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the clinic. I think we touched on a lot of interesting points. I want to thank you all for being here and spending an hour with us and helping our Broward County residents get all this information. I want to invite everybody to stay tuned to our social media for information regarding upcoming trainings and clinics. And I'm seeing a note in the comments. This was a CLE approved clinic, and that CLE number will be posted in the comments. And if there's an issue with that, then of course we'll be sending out an email as well. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to ask our IT person, Jeff, are we cleared to